If you didn't already know it, electric vehicles can be a great option for families with young children because rear-facing child seats especially require a lot of legroom, and that's something that we generally find in dedicated platform EVs like this Lexus RZ. This rides on the same new dedicated battery platform that also underpins the controversially styled Toyota BZ4X. But does that mean the Lexus RZ has enough room for a variety of different child seats in the back? Let's find out. Size-wise, the Lexus RZ is about the same size as the Lexus RX, so you could consider this more of a mid-sized Lexus EV. It's a little bit bigger than a Lexus NX, and like the RX, it has sort of wagon-like proportions back here in the rear. But it does have a reasonable amount of legroom. So with this front driver's seat, adjusted for me at 6 feet tall, you can see that this rear-facing infant seat, this is a fairly large Kleck seat right there. This has absolutely no problems fitting right there behind the driver. But a bit more of a challenge would be some of these larger rear-facing or convertible child seats like this Kiko seat right here. As you can see in this position, it is relatively close to that passenger seat. Now this Kiko seat is on the larger side of things. As you can see, it's a convertible seat, so it'll do rear-facing or forward-facing, and this is suitable for rear-facing up to 40 pounds, so it's a pretty hefty seat. It is adjustable as far as the incline. We have those adjustments down there, and it is in one of the more upright positions, of course, because that's going to be the most restrictive. Give you an idea of what you would need to put the seat in as far as the initial rear-facing positions for those younger children. So reasonable amount of clearance over here between that and the front seat. Let's hop in and see how much room we have up front in this position. Again, the driver's seat was already adjusted for me at 6 feet tall, so let's hop in, and indeed, there's actually a reasonable amount of room. As you can see, my knees are nowhere near touching the dashboard there, but we have a bit of a convenience problem, which is what gives us this dashboard profile, and that is that there's no glove box. You'll notice that the instruction manual is hanging out here in the center console, and this console itself is relatively large and bulky, so there's just not as much storage room going on in here as I might like. If you have a lot of things to carry around with your kid, this might be a bit of a problem. Also, the passenger seat is not as adjustable as I would like. It doesn't have two-way lumbar support like the driver's seat does. But let's go ahead and get back here into the rear area. A lot of parents have asked me about this position recently. I would not necessarily advise this in the RZ because, as you can see, these seats are not only jammed right up next to one another, they're also not sitting exactly squarely in the back of the vehicle. You theoretically could do this and put a person over here on this side. There is just about enough room to actually get in. But when you get inside, you'll notice that it's not necessarily shoulder width that's the problem, because I could actually sit here if I needed to. It's really more of the positioning of the child seats themselves. If you find yourself in a situation where you maybe need to do this and have an infant seat or a convertible seat next to one another, you might want to opt for some slimmer designs because things are going to be a bit tight here. On the anchor front, we have latch anchors for the outboard seating positions. You can see there we have them clearly labeled, and then they're the kind that just poke just a little bit out of the fabric, so they're pretty easy to get to. No doors or lids or any sort of Velcro to deal with. We also have a shoulder belt that actually comes out of the seat back itself rather than out of the ceiling. That does help a child seat like this Kleck seat anchor into position and stay pretty square to the rear seats. The rear seat belts do interfere with the child seat just a little bit, or I should say the child seat can interfere with them. As you can see, when this seat is pretty centered in there, you can just barely access that buckle, so certainly keep that in mind for some of those larger seats out there. Moving to the cargo area, we have top tether anchors for all three seating positions with the center one clearly labeled out. They're just right there behind that little slit in the fabric, pretty easy to get to. And the cargo area itself is pretty large and accommodating. But as far as storage goes, you won't find quite as much room in this cargo area as some dedicated platform EVs. And perhaps most notably, under the hood, there is no front trunk, which is a bit surprising given the size of the hood in this vehicle and the size of the front end design. Toyota simply opted for no cargo capacity up front. When it comes to child seat fitment, the RZ does pretty well. Thanks to the extra legroom that we get in this dedicated platform, rear-facing child seats have absolutely no problem back here, even with a taller person up front. Now, if you're 6'2", 6'3", or over, then things might be a bit of a squeeze and you might need to put that rear-facing seat in the middle. That may also be where the width of the RZ becomes a problem, because this is not quite as wide as many mid-size luxury SUVs are. So something like a Mercedes-Benz GLE or a BMW X5, those are definitely going to be wider across the rear. A lot of EVs have sort of a narrower greenhouse in order to help improve efficiency, and that does result in a little bit less room in the back, a little bit less width on the rear bench. And that's really important for some of these larger and these wider child seats. Nice touch though back here, lots of headroom. You can see I have about 2 inches of headroom back here. That's definitely really good for an EV, especially considering this one doesn't have a huge sheet of glass right over the top of my head. My head's actually right here underneath the regular roof section. This does have a 2-pane moonroof, but it's an electrochromatic kind, so you can actually dim it, sort of frost it effectively. You can see this is in its frosted mode, so that does help reduce the amount of solar radiation that comes right back here to rear passengers. If you want to know more about the RZ, be sure and check out that full video and leave comments down there in the comment section. Your feedback is definitely important to me, which is exactly why we ended up moving to different child seats, because a lot of folks asked where had the reviews gone. Those seats were getting a little bit old. Some of these new modern designs have different features, and they're a lot bigger and heavier. So that really does change the fitment inside a newer car. Let me know what you think about that. And is there something else we should be testing in this video series? Let me know down there, and I'll see all of you next week.